Hi there, I'm Daisy. At 29, I've been around cameras more than people sometimes. They say if you grew up like I did, with parents owning a string of hotels and restaurants, you'd stick to that silver spoon. But not me. I ditched the family business for a camera and nature's own backdrop. Freelancing was my jam, shooting for whoever liked my style, magazines mostly, sometimes ads, you know the deal. So, here's how it all kicked off. My trusty old camera, the one that saw me through countless shoots, finally gave up on me. Kaput. And instead of clicking my way to a quick online fix, I figured I'd hit the local tech shop. Needed to feel the heft of a new camera in my hands before buying. Walking into that tech store was like any other day, except it wasn't. I browsed through the aisles of cameras when this guy, about my age, popped up beside me. Looking for something specific? He asked, his tone casual, not the usual sales pitch I expected. Yeah, something that won't bail on me mid-shot, I replied, half joking. He chuckled. I get that. What's your focus? Landscape, portraits, street scenes? Mostly nature, but I like to mix it up with urban landscapes. Keeps things fresh, I explained, warming up to his genuine interest. Mark, that was his name, walked me through the latest models, explaining specs like he was reciting his favorite book. Not once did he try to shove the priciest tag in my face. It was refreshing. So, what do you think? Willing to take this one for a spin? He gestured towards a sleek model that seemed to fit the bill. Might as well. Can't have my next gig without a reliable sidekick. I grinned, making the decision easier than I thought. Mark processed my purchase, and as he handed over the bag, he tossed in, "Hey, I could use your number. You know, just to make sure everything's working great for you." I laughed, seeing right through his not-so-sly move. Sure, why not? But if I end up with spam texts, you're buying me coffee as compensation. Mark did call, not about the camera, but to ask me out. I said yes. Why not, right? Life's short and all that. After the camera store meet cute, Mark and I were pretty much inseparable. You know how it is when you just click with someone? Yeah, that was us. Always out and about, him with his quirky facts about tech, and me showing him the city through the lens of my camera. One chilly evening about 6 months in, Mark called me up, all excited. Daisy, pack a bag for the weekend. I've got a surprise. Mark, I swear if you've signed us up for some weird survival camp, you're sleeping on the couch. I joked, but I was already pulling on my boots. He picked me up in his rickety old Jeep. God, that thing was a death trap, but he loved it, and we headed out of the city. It was one of those drives where the music's playing, but you're both kinda lost in your own thoughts, you know? Excited, a bit nervous, wondering what's up. Turned out, he booked us a little cabin by the lake. Not fancy, but perfect. Just us, the woods, and a sky full of stars. That night, we sat by the fire, roasting marshmallows, the cheap ones that turn perfect golden brown, and I could tell he was itching to say something. So, Daisy, you know I suck at this kinda stuff. Mark started, poking the fire with a stick. But, I've been thinking a lot. I raised an eyebrow, munching on a marshmallow. Thinking can be dangerous, Mark. What's on your mind? He chuckled, took a deep breath, and then turned to me, his face half lit by the firelight. I love this, you know? Us. And I'm kinda hoping you do too. I leaned in, nudging his shoulder. Yeah, I kinda do. He fumbled in his pocket, pulled out a small box, and it hit me. Oh, this is happening. Mark just went silent, looking serious and kinda scared all at once. Marry me, Daisy. For real. The box popped open, and there it was. A simple ring, nothing flashy. Just perfect. I didn't expect to, but I laughed. It was either that or cry, right? Mark, this is the worst proposal ever. Of course, I will. He grinned, relief washing over him. Damn, I thought you'd need more convincing. Just promise me no more surprises like this without a warning. No promises, he teased, slipping the ring on my finger. We spent the rest of the night just sitting there, the fire dying down, talking about what this all meant for us. No big dreams, just real stuff, like whether we should get a new couch or if his Jeep would make it through another winter. The next day, we spent it lazy by the lake, skipping stones, and talking about how to break the news to our families. Mark's a bit estranged from his folks, they're tough nuts, always on about money and whatnot. He warned me they might not take it well, seeing as I wasn't exactly rolling in dough in their eyes. Let them talk, I said, tossing a stone across the water. We know what we have, and that's enough. Mark nodded, watching the ripples. Yeah, it's us against the world, huh? Always, I confirmed, knowing it wouldn't be easy, but also that it'd be worth it. Little did I know just how rocky it would get with his family, but for that moment, it was just us and the future. And that was enough. A couple of weeks after Mark popped the question, it was time to meet the infamous in-laws. We drove over to their place on a Sunday. I was a bundle of nerves, fussing over my hair and my clothes, wanting to make a good impression. The moment we stepped through the door, it was like walking into a cold gust. Mark's mom looked me up and down as if I was something the cat dragged in. His dad wasn't much warmer, eyeing us with a skeptical squint that made my stomach knot. So, Daisy was it? His mom started, not even a smile. Who do you work for? What's your salary like? I blinked, taken aback by the bluntness. I'm a freelance photographer. I work for myself, so my income varies. At that, Mark's sister, who had been lounging on the couch with her phone, looked up and snorted. Freelance? Sounds like a fancy word for being jobless. Mark could have picked anyone, and he ends up with a beggar from an alley. Their laughter stung, and I felt my face go hot with embarrassment. Mark's hand found mine, giving it a squeeze. Hey, that's enough, he snapped, his voice firm, more forceful than I'd ever heard it. I love her, and she's brilliant at what she does. That's all you need to know. His mom rolled her eyes, but dropped the subject. Dinner was a tense affair, with me trying to make polite conversation while dodging snide remarks about my little hobby. It was a relief to finally say our goodbyes. After that disaster, it was my turn to introduce Mark to my parents. We met them at a cozy little cafe downtown, a far cry from the tension at his family's place. My parents were all smiles when we walked in, pulling us into warm hugs. Mark, we've heard so much about you, my mom gushed, leading him to a table by the window. We're just ordinary pensioners now, my dad chimed in, his eyes twinkling as he shook Mark's hand. Used to run a small business back in the day, nothing too grand. He winked at me, a silent promise to keep our little secret just that, a secret. Mark had no idea he was sitting across from two people who could buy his parents' house 10 times over, without blinking. And that's how I wanted it, at least for now. So, Mark, tell us about yourself. Daisy's told us bits and pieces, but we want to hear it from you, my mom said, her tone inviting. Mark, looking more relaxed than he had in days, launched into his life story, from his struggles with his family's expectations to his dreams of starting his own tech company. My parents listened, nodding and throwing in questions here and there. As we sipped our coffees, it struck me how different this meeting was from the one with his family. No judgment, no prying into personal finances, just genuine interest and acceptance. It was like a balm to the burns of the earlier encounter. When we left the cafe, Mark squeezed my hand. Your folks are amazing, Daisy. Thanks for that, I needed it. I smiled up at him, my heart full despite the rocky start to our family introductions. They love you already, you know. Mark and I wanted a simple wedding. Nothing fancy, just close friends and family, a little chapel, and some good food. That's all we needed to start our life together. But of course, his family had other ideas. From the get-go, his sister sneered at our plans. A modest wedding? More like a beggar's bash, she laughed one evening over dinner at their place, making everyone but Mark chuckle. His mother chimed in, Really, Mark, you're setting yourself up to look like you can't afford anything better. I tried to keep my cool, focusing on my food. It's our wedding. We want it to be intimate and personal, I explained, hoping to smooth things over. Mark backed me up. Daisy's right. It's our day, our way. The wedding day arrived, and it was everything I dreamed of, simple and sweet. But true to form, Mark's mom and sister barely hid their disdain. They didn't mingle with my family, just sat there looking like they'd swallowed lemons. My parents tried to chat with them, but got icy stares in return. After the ceremony, when Mark and I moved into my apartment, that's when the real fun began. His mom and sister started dropping by unannounced, always around mealtime. They'd sit at my table, eating the food I made for us, while throwing digs about how I was living off Mark now. "So, Daisy, still snapping pictures for pennies?" his sister would ask, a smirk playing on her lips. I kept my tone light but firm. "I do well enough. Photography can be pretty lucrative, you know." They exchanged looks, clearly not buying it. One afternoon, his sister, who was supposedly job hunting, asked outright, "Come on, how much do you really make? Enough to keep my brother happy?" Before I could answer, Mark jumped in, his voice tight with annoyance. "That's none of your business. Daisy's not living off me. We're partners." Their visits became more frequent, and his sister's demands grew more audacious. She'd call Mark, right in front of me, asking him to transfer money so she could go out with her friends. "Mark, I'm a bit short this month. Can you throw some cash my way?" she'd say, her voice loud enough for me to hear. Sometimes Mark would give in, sending her money. Other times, he'd refuse, and boy, did she throw a fit. "You're my brother. How can you leave me hanging while you play house with her?" One day, after she stormed out following another of her tantrums about money, I turned to Mark. "We need to set some boundaries. This can't go on." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know, Daisy. I'm sorry. It's just hard, you know? They're family." Things between Mark and his family had been teetering on the edge of outright hostility, and it all came crashing down one Sunday dinner at his mother's house. We knew walking into that den was risky, but it was his sister's birthday dinner in a couple of months, and she had her heart set on something pricey. We were barely through the door when his sister launched into her wish list. "Mark, you know what I want for my birthday, right? That designer bag I showed you last week. It's only a little over $1,000. Mark frowned, setting his jaw in that way he does when he's about to lay down the law. "Lisa, we've talked about this. I can't be dropping that kind of money anymore. I'm married now, and we have our own expenses." Lisa's face twisted up like she'd bitten into a lemon. "Oh, come on. Since when do you back down from spoiling your little sis? What, has Daisy got you on a leash now?" The table went quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. I felt every eye on me, especially the burning glare from his mother. Mark shook his head, reaching over to squeeze my hand under the table. "Lisa, no. I'm sorry, but we've made a budget, and we're sticking to it." That set Lisa off. She stood up, knocking her chair back with a loud scrape that made me jump. "This is all your fault," she shrieked at me. "You're just sucking him dry, taking all his money and attention. He used to have enough for me before you." I tried to keep my voice calm, but it was hard. "Lisa, I haven't asked Mark to stop helping you out. We're just being responsible." And with that, his mom chimed in, siding with Lisa as always. "Mark, she's your sister. You can't let her down. What kind of brother are you if you can't help her out?" Mark stood, pulling me up with him. "Enough. We're leaving. I'm not going to justify our personal decisions here." We left amid Lisa's cries and his mom's accusing eyes. It was the last straw. We decided then and there to cut off communication for a while. We needed peace, a break from the drama. So, we packed up a few days later and went on a small trip, just the two of us, to clear our heads. Coming back from that trip felt like a breath of fresh air, until we found out Lisa hadn't given up. She broke into our apartment while we were collecting the last of our things from the car. You think you can just go off on vacations with my brother's money while I get nothing?" Lisa was in my face the second I walked in, her voice so loud it echoed off the walls. What are you talking about, Lisa? I use my own money for our trips. I tried to keep calm, but seeing her rifling through my closet, throwing my clothes around, made my blood boil. Lies. All this. She waved at my stuff scattered on the floor. Bought with Mark's money, right? Living the high life while I get scraps. Before I could stop her, she grabbed my new camera from the desk and hurled it to the floor. The crash was like a physical blow. That's enough. I screamed, my patience snapping. Get out of our apartment, now. When Mark came back and saw the mess, the broken camera, he was furious. He called Lisa, yelling into the phone while I tried to salvage what I could of my equipment. She hung up on him, but not before hurling a few choice insults. Mark turned to me, his face softening. I'm so sorry, Daisy. I'll get you a new camera. We'll figure this out. I nodded, too upset to speak. We cleaned up together, the silence between us heavy with unspoken promises to never let his family tear at us like this again. A few weeks after the camera debacle, Mark got a call from Lisa. She was all chirpy, which was a rarity, announcing her birthday bash and, surprise, her engagement. They were celebrating at Monte Cristo's, the fanciest joint in town. Normally, the mention of such a swanky place would have me rolling my eyes, but this time, I couldn't help but smile. Mark noticed and looked puzzled. What's up? Thought you'd want to steer clear of anything involving Lisa after everything, he said, clearly hesitant. I leaned over, whispering, Trust me, we need to go to this one. There's a reason. He studied my face for a second, then nodded. All right, if you say so. The night of the dinner, we dressed up, Mark in his sleek suit that made him look like a movie star, and me in a simple but elegant black dress. As we approached Lisa's reserved area, I spotted the whole clan gathered around a large table, Mark's parents, some aunts and uncles, and Lisa's new fiancé, a slick-looking guy with a too-tight smile. Lisa, spotting us, waved us over with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. There's the happy couple. Come join us, celebrate my birthday and engagement, she called out, loud enough for nearby tables to glance our way. As we got closer, I noticed there was exactly one chair free. Lisa's eyes twinkled maliciously as she took it all in. Mark's mom, seeing our hesitation, spoke up with a snide tone. Oh, it seems we're short a chair. This table is for family members, anyway. Lisa chimed in, her voice sugary with malice. Yeah, Daisy, you can stand or maybe find a spot at the bar. The relatives murmured, some with smirks, others just uncomfortable. Mark was red in the face, fists clenching as he turned to me. Let's just go. We don't need this. But I put a hand on his arm, shaking my head slightly. No, let's stay. I want to. He looked confused, but nodded, trusting my judgment. We stood there, by the table, the tension thick. Just when the awkwardness hit its peak, the restaurant manager came bustling over, looking apologetic. I'm terribly sorry, but it seems we're quite full tonight, no spare chairs available at this moment, he said, his eyes darting between us and the smug faces of Mark's family. Lisa and her mom couldn't hide their glee. Their smiles stretched ear to ear, thinking they had us cornered, standing like fools without a seat. Just as their smiles reached peak smugness, the manager's expression shifted to a warm, familiar smile directed at me. He raised his voice, not obnoxiously loud, but enough to carry over the murmur of the busy restaurant. However, we do have a VIP table reserved for the daughter of the owner of Monte Cristo's. Miss Daisy, your table is ready. The table went silent. Forks paused midair, and the color drained from Lisa and her mom's faces. Mark looked at me, a mix of shock and awe in his eyes, while the rest of his family seemed to be grappling with this new piece of information. Your dad owns Monte Cristo's? Mark stuttered, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, giving him a sheepish grin. I wanted you to love me for me, not for for this. I gestured around the opulent setting of the restaurant. He chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. You were right not to tell. God, can you imagine the shopping lists I'd be handed otherwise? We both laughed, the tension easing as we followed the manager to our VIP table, a beautifully secluded spot with a stunning view of the city skyline. The whispers from Mark's family followed us, their earlier triumph replaced by stunned silence. We had just settled into the comfort of our private table, sipping on champagne that suddenly tasted sweeter, when half an hour later, a sheepish Lisa and her equally embarrassed mom approached us. Their earlier arrogance had evaporated, replaced by awkward shame. "Daisy, we didn't realize, well, we sort of went overboard with the ordering," Lisa stuttered, not meeting my eyes. "The bill is a bit more than we can handle. Could you, since you're family?" I raised an eyebrow, cutting her off. "Oh, but I thought you said I wasn't really family? You know, at the table earlier?" My voice was calm, but the point hit hard. Her mom chimed in, desperation lacing her tone. "Daisy, please, we just didn't know. Help us out here?" Mark squeezed my hand under the table, a silent signal of support. I looked at them both, their faces a mix of embarrassment and hope, and then back at Mark, who nodded slightly. "I think it's best if you handle your own bill tonight," I said firmly. "After all, it's important to live within one's means, wouldn't you agree?" Lisa's face fell, and her mother's mouth tightened. They turned away without another word, heading back to their table to face the music of their own making. After the big reveal at Monte Cristo's, life took on a new rhythm for Mark and me. His family, once sharp with their words and cold with their actions, switched gears so fast you'd think they'd been fans of mine all along. Their sudden sweetness, all sugar-coated compliments and eager invitations, felt like watching bad actors in a worse play. We weren't buying tickets to that show, though. We kept our distance, content in our own little world. Things got even more interesting when we heard through the grapevine that Lisa's fiancé had called it quits, right after the dinner debacle. "Can't tie myself to that kind of drama," he supposedly said. Can't say I blamed him. Mark and I were at my parents' house when we found out, enjoying one of those perfect afternoons that felt borrowed from a storybook. We were out on the terrace, the city sprawling peacefully below, sipping tea as the sun dipped low. "So, they're trying really hard, huh?" Mark mused, nodding toward his phone, which had been buzzing with texts from his mom. I chuckled, rolling my eyes. "Trying too hard. It's almost embarrassing. But I'm more interested in what's happening with you and my dad." Mark's face lit up, the way it always did when he talked about his dreams. "Your dad's incredible, you know? He offered to fund my startup. Said he's been looking for a new venture and thinks my tech idea has legs." My mom, who had joined us with a fresh pot of tea, smiled knowingly. "We always believed in helping dreams grow. And we believe in you, Mark." He reached over, squeezing her hand gratefully. "Thank you, Ellen. That means more than I can say." The conversation shifted to future plans, dreams of a tech company that could change the small world of ours, and eventually, to the family Mark and I hope to start soon. "You think you're ready for the whole parenting adventure?" my dad asked, a twinkle in his eye. Mark laughed, a sound full of warmth and life. "With Daisy? I'd be ready for anything." And that's how our days went, filled with planning and dreaming. Mark began laying the groundwork for his business, fueled by my dad's support and the freedom of no longer hiding who we were. And as for me, I kept shooting, capturing the world through my lens, only now I sometimes caught glimpses of a future that included a little one tugging at my skirt, asking to see what mommy sees. One quiet evening, as Mark and I lounged on our couch, the city lights twinkling like a promise outside our window, I broached the subject that had been on my mind. "Mark, do you ever think about how crazy it is? How everything turned out?" I asked, tucking my feet under his legs. He chuckled, pulling me closer. "Every day. But I wouldn't change a thing. Not really." "Not even your sister's theatrics?" I teased. "Well, maybe that," he conceded with a grin. "But it brought us here, didn't it? To this moment." The rest of the night was spent making more plans, talking about nursery colors and the kind of parents we wanted to be. It was real, it was ours, and it was just beginning. As we finally turned in, the last thing I saw was the ring on my finger, a glittering reminder of where we'd been and where we were going. And I fell asleep thinking, this, right here, is what happiness feels like.